Hi, I'm Jacob with National Fleet Products, and today I'm going to show you how to install a swivel ramp in a Mercedes Sprinter van. First step is going to be the most important. You're going to remove the spare tire and lower it down so you don't actually drill any holes into it by accident. To do that, you're simply going to take these plastic pieces right off, and that'll be on both sides here, and that'll allow you to be able to lower the spare tire and get it out of your way. Very simple, and like I said, that is the first step. Okay, step 2, we're going to put the mounting plate into the vehicle and trace out its location so you know where to cut when the time comes. So simply take the plate, put it into the rear like so, and using this factory trim plate here, we're just going to match up the plate to the rear of the van so that the reveal is approximately the same all the way across. And that'll let you know that you're not kittywampus or unsquare here. And then simply take your marker and trace out the perimeter of the plate. Okay, step 3, you're going to take a T45 bit to remove the factory, both tie-down points and these center holes here that keep the floor recessed. And then you're going to use a T20 to remove this silver trim plate here on the end. But again, hit that and get these all loosened up, just like that. Okay, moving on. We have our tie-down points released, so the floor is loose, and we're going to be cutting the floor. There's a couple ways you can accomplish this. You could use your skill saw and adjust the blade depth so you're not cutting into the floor. That's going to be about a 1/4 inch or so, maybe 3/8. Alternatively, there's another nice saw I like to use called some people call the multi-tool, and these cut really well. In particular, they can help with some of the angles and curvature that you might be trying to achieve. But either way, it depends how detailed you really want to get on your fit and finish, which will depend how you're going to cut this out. So again, we'll trim this right alongside our trimmed out line, and that will allow us to recess the mounting plate down into the floor, get metal to metal contact, and we'll eliminate the hump or the bump transition point, which you will see later. So again, let's start cutting. Okay, now that we're done cutting this back, you can see that the floor has been exposed. We're going to go ahead, this is a good time to vacuum up all this sawdust, get it prepped for the next step. Okay, step 5. We're going to place the plate into the van, and we're going to drill holes using a bit that is 13 30-seconds. And so simply take your plate, get it in here, and you're going to be drilling these 4 spots here, these 3 across the middle, and then 2 over here on the end. And you're simply going to be, again, using that 13 30-second in here. And these holes that are slotted allow you to put that hole anywhere you might need to in between. Just go ahead and put it right in the middle, though, to start. And we'll be enlarging those later, so don't sweat it too much. Okay, moving on, we have our preliminary holes drilled. We're going to remove this plate and enlarge some of the holes. So let me show you which ones are going to be moving. You get this plate out of here, and we're going to be enlarging the holes on the driver's side and the passenger side. These are the holes that marry to the underbody plates to give this the rigidity and the support that they need. Today we're going to use a step bit. You could use a regular drill bit if you'd like, but we're going to be enlarging these here, again, on the driver and the passenger side to be 9/16. The middle 3 holes that we have here across the middle, you do have an option. You could enlarge those up to a 1/2 inch and use the supplied plus nuts, or rivet nuts as some people call them, to make that a little bit easier of an install. If you don't happen to have the tool to set the plus nuts or the rivet nuts, we are supplying bolts, nuts, and washers, and you can simply through bolt. All 3 of these positions here are easily accessible from underneath because you've removed the spare tire and they're easy to get to. So again, we're gonna upsize all of these. You'll see that here in a few shots, and we'll show you what it looks like afterwards when we're done. Okay, we have all our holes right sized to the job, and next we need to apply some sort of solution to protect it to keep it from rusting. Now there are a number of options you could use. It's really endless. I've got a couple with me today I'll show you that we like. One is simple, it's just a Rust-Oleum product. It's a rust inhibitor. You can spray this on, it'll give it some finish back to it. Basically similar to applying like a primer type item. We also have a neat new product that I was introduced to, a liquid tape that again seals up the hole a little bit and keeps the water from infiltrating into the vehicle. Again, use your product of choice and liberally apply it to all of your drilled raw surfaces there. And then we're going to start putting this thing together. Okay, next step. We have our holes. We put something on here to treat them, keep them from being rusted. And this next step is going to address just these center 3 holes. For this example, we are using a plus nut gun here. This is pneumatic, air powered, and you're simply going to be putting this in, squeeze the trigger, and that is set just like that. I'll show you one more time. Una vez más, right here. We're going to plug that in. Now I would like to take a moment here to reiterate that we drilled these holes out to exactly 1/2 inch. And that allows these plus nuts to slip in. If you've decided not to use the plus nuts, you're simply going to take the supplied bolt and put a nut and a washer up underneath. Again, you don't need to drill the hole out to be that large. And there is no reason not to use the nut and washer underneath. This plus nut is simply a little bit simpler and quicker solution because you don't have to get underneath to hold the nut as you tighten this down. Either method is going to work just fine for this application. Our next step is going to be taking the supplied nylon shims and gluing them to the floor of the body. You have some large ones and some small ones. And it's important to note these can be trimmed down to size to suit your needs. And so to start with, the small ones, they're easy. You're simply going to take these fingers and you're going to be placing them in between the ribs. And this simply helps so that when you're tightening the plate down to the body of the floor, you can't crush the floor and deform it. And you can be placing these all over. I'll show you how we're going to glue them out here in a second. But you can also take these large blocks and you can cut them down to smaller sizes. And that allows you to place it around the holes as such where you might think it needed to be. Now you could take this piece and place it right over the hole that you need and drill through later. It just depends on your personal choice and how it's working out for you that day. But there is a lot of flexibility in this. And again, the main idea is just to give it a shim in there to keep you from compressing the floor and flattening it out as you tighten everything together. So we'll go ahead and glue these up and I'll show you what it looks like when we're done. Okay, we now have all our nylon blocks glued into place. I have you come up here and take a look, and you can get a visual of about how this is supposed to look. Again, there is no one right way, but you just want to get these close to where the holes are going to be, again, so that you don't compress the floor flat when all these bolts are tightened down. Okay, we're going to start putting this thing together. So we're going to take our mounting plate, we're going to place it right in our spot here. And our first step is going to be to get these center 3 pieces in. Now this is going to center the plate and keep it from moving. as well as keep the middle from bowing up when you eventually go to tighten the either side down. And again, because we use the plus nuts, we're ready to just go ahead and thread these in, and we'll do as such here. Now we are going to be using an Allen key to do this. It is a 3/16 size Allen. Now, if we hadn't used the plus nuts, again, you'd simply be taking this, a nut and a washer from underneath, and tightening those down. But because we're with the plus nuts, just like that, we're going to be ready to go. Okay, at this point, we have our plate secured in here by these 3 bolts, and we are going to go ahead and take the underbody plates and fit them up underneath the van and secure them. The larger plate is your driver's side, and the smaller one is your passenger side. And you'll notice they have holes here that will correspond with bolt hole locations in your frame rail. These will be the same that the trailer hitch uses, and you can maintain your hitch. So the hitch mounts on the inside of your frame rail generally, then you have your frame rail, and this will mount to the outside of your frame rail. You'll take the bolts that hold those on and loosely bolt this up underneath to support it, and then you're going to come down through the top and put your other bolts in, tighten those, and then tighten the one at the frame rail. And we'll show you how that's done next. Okay, at this point, all of our bolts have been tightened up. We have our underbody plates on both the driver and the passenger side. We've placed our top plate, and we have all of the bolt holes filled through the entire plate, both on the driver's side here. You can see that's all tied in nice, as well as on the passenger side over here. You can see that these 2 are in this spot. You'll notice we have reassembled the tie-down points that hold the floor in place. And at this point, we're ready to stand up the ramp, put the ramp up in here, and we're going to do the final part of the installation. Okay, the next step is we're going to assemble the right side, passenger side locking mechanism. And it all comes in the bag here, everything you need, bolts and hardware and whatnot. And first step is you screw in this longer bolt. This is an adjustment stop that we're going to take care of later. I'll show you how to adjust that. And there are 2 positions here, depending on what you're going to need. I tend to use this one most often. And you're going to thread this black handle in there so that it just barely protrudes through the plate. And then you're going to take it, and we do supply 2 mounting positions for this. The one on your left here is for a 37-inch ramp. The one on the right is for a 47-inch wide ramp. And you're simply going to place this right there and use these bolts and washers as you see to assemble and attach this to the mounting plate. And you will be putting 4 of these in as such to secure this to the plate. Okay, at this point, the passenger side lock has been bolted in. I just wanted to give you a visual on how this looks once it's completed. You can see here it's tied in and how we've spaced it. There is some slots here for some adjustment on this. And what you're going to want to do is you're just going to want to set this passenger side lock to the side for the moment. We are not going to install that until the ramp is up and in, and I'll show you why in a moment. But for now, this is good and this is how it should be. Okay, the next step is going to be to put a trim plate on. And you'll notice we provide this trim plate. It's what's called a 5-bar diamond plate. And it's going to go over the mounting plate here, 1 to dress it up, and 2 to bring it up to the height roughly of that floor and to eliminate the bump. So this plate's going to go right here. We provide 6 rivets, and you're going to use drill bit size 13/64. And you're simply going to drill your hole in 6 locations across here and go ahead and rivet this to it. And we'll show you how that's done.
We just put a mark.
And one thing to take note is you might want to mark where the head of your bolt is here so you're not accidentally drilling in and trying to rivet at this location. So go ahead and just mark that location so that when you do end up covering those up, you know where not to drill. Okay, we're getting really close now. You'll notice our trim plate has been riveted on. And next, we've laid out a couple parts here. These pieces are going to hold the foot of the ramp in, and you just kind of want to have these set up and ready to go. They're only going to be going on here one way, and this piece is going to sit here on your driver's side, and this piece will sit here on the passenger side, and you'll have a number of bolts with washers that are going to go through and hold it in. But you just kind of want to have these ready to go, and we're going to show you how this ramp goes into place and what the next step's going to be here. Okay, you can see here we have this hanging, and this makes it really easy to put in, but that might not be something at your disposal. So I'd like to show you how to put this up if you had to use a forklift or good old-fashioned muscle. Generally speaking, this would be laid down with this side facing the ground, and you'd be lifting and then standing it up. And what I wanted to point out here is this side in particular can be tricky. You don't want to be grabbing this black spring to try to lift it. You don't want to grab here. There's some movement. You can get a finger pinched. And most importantly, you don't want to be grabbing onto here, because again, if this was laying flat, this leaf will open and fold out as you're trying to stand it up. So you would really need to be grabbing underneath, supporting underneath the ramp when you stand it up. Again, either from the ground or say from some forklift forks that you might have brought up to keep it up to height here. But again, I'll show you how this goes in, and again, some of this you'll have to infer on your own depending on what the unique case might be that you're set with. So we will we'll place this and show you what it looks like here in a moment. Yes.
Okay.
I'll lift it and just put them on. Oops, right back towards me. How's that?
Okay, Jake. All I need you to do is just lift it. Just.
Yep.
Go.
Okay, the ramp is now up and supporting itself. I want to expand a little bit on what you just saw. You saw these 2 finger plates be tightened down. And I wanted to mention that when those were being tightened down, I was over here on the passenger side lifting this side up to take the pressure off it. So when that was being done, somebody needs to be over here lifting so those bolts aren't trying to overcompensate and do the work of it. But you'll notice here it is now floating and is free floating. And I want to point out something that's going to happen to every single Mercedes Sprinter install. Every single time, you'll think that you're nearly there, you'll go to swivel it out, and you'll notice up there in the upper corner, it is going to hit the door jamb. And that is not what the customer paid for. So, we're going to start doing some adjustments, and that'll be one of the first ones we try to tackle. So, I'll go through showing you all those adjustments now. Pay attention. Okay, so to prepare for the adjustments, you'll need to install the passenger side lock first. And so simply, this slides in like we saw earlier. Now this black handle is going to be tightening down, and that'll hold it in place. And this actually has a little bit of a ratchet feature to where you can lift up, let it click down, and then tighten again. And what I like to do is actually turn it back out of the way so that we know if that's moved or not. And you'll notice there is some play on this. We're going to set that distance depth later using this limiter as one of our very last adjustments. But for now, get that in there, and then we're going to take the ramp and we're going to swivel it closed. And we're going to notice that I didn't get in quite far enough. You're going to loosen that up again, slide it maybe a little further in, take note, and now we're going to tighten that lock down because we have the appropriate distance there. And so again, our first adjustment was just getting that roughly placed. We are then going to deploy the ramp. Simply pull that lever forward, and now if this lever tends to be sticking, take the pressure off the leaves by taking your left hand, pushing in, and unlatching it. Now you're going to take it, grab it by the handle, and deploy the ramp. Okay, now our first adjustment is going to be over here on the driver's side. It is this rubber bumper. And this rubber bumper controls the pitch that the ramp leans in. So simply take your 13mm wrench, break that nut loose, pull this off. It is quite long in thread. And take one of those nuts and take it off. We're going to put this nut on the back side. So take this threaded stud again and now thread it all the way in. Again, take your nut, put it on the back side. Go ahead and tighten that up and make it permanent so that it doesn't walk away on us later. And now you're going to go and do the same thing on the driver's side. You'll notice, or excuse me, the passenger side. That was the driver's side. We're going to do the same thing on the passenger side. We're going to unthread this rubber bumper. Take one of those nuts. Take that nut, throw it onto the back side, and thread this sucker all the way in. And tighten it. Now that was the first adjustment. Now we're going to fold the ramp up. Again, simply take the handles, fold the ramp up. And you will notice the ramp is now leaning quite a bit further into the vehicle. In fact, the ramp will now open a full 90 degrees. Come around to the other side here, and you'll see it no longer impedes the door jamb. It is very close. You can just barely get your finger in there, but there is room, and that is how it is intended to be and how it should look. We have a few more adjustments. Pay attention, we'll do the others next. Okay, the next adjustment. This is a critical adjustment and it is a little bit tricky. What we're going to be fixing is the amount of drop that the ramp might have. In this case, our ramp is actually sitting a little high, so we're going to be lowering it, but the steps are the same regardless. And really, when you're doing this, you want to look at the passenger side of the ramp here. When you go and you put the ramp away, you can see it sits a little high. You absolutely, though, you don't want to have to be lifting the ramp up to put it away. It should maintain its height pretty well. You see how it's going down? We're going to adjust it so it fits in there perfectly. And the adjustment for that is on the driver's side. It is pretty simple. It just takes an Allen and a 13mm wrench, two 13mm wrenches. Okay. We're going to adjust that drop to the ramp here, or in this case, lower it a little bit. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to loosen 3 bolts. You'll notice on the driver's side, there's 3 bolts in this triangle shaped pattern, and on the inside are the nuts. What you want to do is be very careful to pay attention, and you're going to take that nut and you're going to break it loose. and you need to break it. Oh, there she be. About 1 to 1.5 threads. It doesn't need to come that far off. And you need to do the same to all these. So now all these are just a little loose in here, you can see. This is tricky. This plate right here, this is threaded. So this nut acts as a double nut. So now what you have to do is you come over here and you're gonna loosen this side of the bolt head and draw the bolt out a little bit, and that'll allow this slip plate to move. So we're just gonna simply come over here. And just a slight turn of the wrench loosens these up. And next, you're going to take your 6mm Allen and stick that right there. And you're going to be adjusting this vertical bolt. Now we're going to take a step back and show you what that looks like next. Okay, so to adjust this pitch here, or to keep this level and whatnot, you're going to simply swivel this out. Now, if it was hanging low, you would need to come underneath, support this, and lift it up to take the pressure off it. Because ours is actually sitting a little high, we're going to be able to go ahead and loosen the bolt over there, and it'll drop down ever so much. This is going to be a very slight adjustment, maybe only 1 thread or so, and it's going to be done on this side. And again, that's going to be really simply done with the Allen and the 13mm here on top. And you would simply come in here and tighten it as so, or in this case, loosen it to give yourself a little more play and lower the opposite side. Now on this side, on the passenger side, you'll notice it's been dropped, and look at how nicely it falls into there. It just barely uses the ramp to get itself into the lock. Perfectly adjusted. At this point, you can come back over here and tighten everything up. We're all done. So again, first tighten the bolt heads up, then come in and tighten the nuts up. Then we'll go on to our next step. Okay, one of the last adjustments we're going to do is a little tricky as well. It controls this lever over here, and this lever does a few things for us. First, you'll notice if you were to separate the 2 leaves, it has a little finger that grabs the 2 sections of the leaves, keeps them together so it doesn't rattle going down the road. But also, it is controlling the JHook over here on the end in the back. You can see that this moves and follows this. We're going to adjust the threads on here, and that'll keep the ramp from moving around when you're going down the road. And I'll show you just how that's going to work. Right now you can see we have a little bit of room here. We just need to choke that up a little bit. It doesn't have to touch, but we do have to move it up. And I'll play with this and show you how it looks like here at the end. And there we go. It's very close to touching, but it's not touching, and that's what we're looking for. So we're going to go ahead and tighten this down right there, and I'll show you what that's accomplished for us in a minute. Okay, that simple JHook adjustment was what keeps the ramp from having rearward travel. And so that keeps the ramp from moving no further than that. That is the most it will move to the rear and keeps it from banging against the rear doors. So that's why that JHook adjustment is important. Lastly, I'll have you come over here and take a look. There's one final adjustment we'll need to do, and it is adjusting this limit here. And that limit allows you to set the distance that this lock travels in. And so you might have it say there, and it keeps it from going any further. If you were to back this out, the lock will then go in further. And so you just need to adjust that so that when the ramp shuts, there is good contact with this nylon bracket. So you're going to put this in, and you'll see that this is making good contact here. And you are then going to screw in your limit. And once it's made good contact, fire that nut over, and this will act as your lock nut. And that way, every time you take your lock out, you'll have perfect placement. And again, to tighten this down, I like to tighten it all the way forward and then stow that black handle to the rear so you'll always know if it's loose or not. Okay, we are back to adjusting the rubber bumpers, and this is going to be a final adjustment. You'll remember the way we positioned this bumper, we threw the nut on the back, and we did the same on the passenger side over here. And what I want you to notice is we've got a little gap here. And we want to fix that gap. Right now the gap is about as big as this wrench here. You can fit it in there. So we want to go ahead and we want to loosen this nut up again. Spin that rubber bumper forward so that the rubber bumper makes contact with the metal here on the ramp. And that is going to keep the ramp from having excess play or rattle. And once that bumper makes contact, we will tighten this nut down, and that'll keep it from going anywhere. Okay, we're back in the van. We have closed the doors behind us. The ramp is stowed, and this is the final piece. You may have noticed you were given some rubber foam blocks here with self-adhesive tape on the back. You're simply going to pull that off. And what these are for, these are the backup, you could say, to keep them from hitting the door, the ramp from hitting the rear doors. And these go on the door, they self-adhesive right to the door, and you're going to put that so that the channel here will have travel into there. And you're simply going to place it here, figure out where you think it needs to be, double check that it's going to make contact. And if you can see that back there, we are set and ready to go. And this ramp is going to be nearly solid going down the road. And of course, do the same thing on the driver's side as well. Next, I'd like to show you some tips and tricks that can solve some frustrating issues that may crop up. First and foremost is this passenger side release locking lever. Now, as you can see here, this is free floating and should easily have movement. Sometimes though, you'll come back here and you'll find this is frozen and unable to be moved. Most of the time, that is due to the leaves having pressure on them. Maybe you're sitting on a bit of an incline on a hill and there's pressure holding on the finger that holds these two leaves together. Simply take your left hand, push the two leaves together, and that should free up that passenger side lock to allow it to easily unlock and then again to deploy. Okay, I want to provide a little visual for you so you can see the innards of this. Again, we're going back to this passenger side lock here. And what I want to do is I want to open the leaves of the ramp up and let you see what's going on underneath. That when this lever is being activated, it's pushing up that finger. And that finger is grabbing the other side of the ramp here. And that's what draws the leaves together to keep it from rattling going down the road. Okay, the next thing I'd like to point out, again, we're going to go back to this JHook. You can see it in the upright position. This is for when the ramp is deployed, but you'll notice it can still be moved, either by accident while walking or traveling on the ramp, or if somebody were to accidentally grab this lever over here. And what I'm pointing out here is that sometimes this gets accidentally moved, and then when the ramp goes and is stored, it's trapped in the wrong position. And that will not allow you to either store the ramp appropriately or again, keep it locked in the rearward position. So that's something you just want to keep an eye on. That is something that can happen from time to time. And it's as simple as deploying the ramp and remembering to move that out. Now the ramp is ready to store, and again, for reference, this JHook is grabbing this stud right back here. Okay, there is one other adjustment that doesn't often need to be done, but it's something I'd like to make everybody aware of, and that is this piece of spring steel here. It exists on both the upper plate and the lower plate at the bottom of the ramp, and this allows for this flap to flex. And I'll show you later how that looks here in a minute, but I want to show you that that is spring steel, and that when bent will have a little bit of a memory to it. So I'm going to show you how to do that here, but I wanted to show you the innards first and show you what was going to happen. So let's go ahead and deploy the ramp. And again, that flexible end plate exists down here as well. And that's going to be there to provide a contour to a variety of surfaces. So in this case, it's making good contact with the ground. But you might not always want that. Maybe you're unloading on a gravel surface. You can take this flap and you can bend it over center as such, and now it will float. And so if you're typically going to be moving something with larger tires, you can roll up onto this and it'll press down, but then float back up. Again, it just depends on your unique circumstances and how you plan on using the ramp, but both end flaps are capable of that, and that is a standard item. Okay, now the ramp is stowed, and you can see this flap is still sprung up a little. And the last thing I'd like to comment on here is sometimes people will make comments about a little bit of rattling noise that can exist. And more often than not, it is due to these two springed flaps clapping going down the road. And so all you have to do to eliminate the rattle is with one hand, brace the ramp, and the second, give it a little bit of a pull, and that will keep this flap away from the other flap, and there won't be clapping going down the road, and you'll have a quiet ride. Okay, we're in the final throws here. I'll do a once over and show you how the ramp should look and act. First and foremost, let's do the swivel, and we are simply going to be lifting here and swinging out. As you'll see, you get 90-degree access. And now to store, there is one important thing I'd like to call out. It would look like you could just push this ramp closed and that the lever would lift and lock, but it is not designed for that. And you'll notice, in fact, it fights you a little bit. What is the way to use it is you should be lifting and then pushing in. Not doing that can cause this spring to break, and then you would have to purchase a new lock. So again, you are lifting both to take it out and to put it away, and storing the ramp. Next, let me show you how to deploy the ramp. You're going to come over here, again, take the pressure off the leaves, unlock it. We do provide two handles. I encourage use of both handles for safety. Now this is the largest ramp that we offer in a two-piece. It is 47 inches wide, 126 inches long. This one has a capacity of 1,500 pounds. It is spring assisted, and it's something you can easily deploy. I like to get it to right about here. These ramps come standard with wheels on the end, and something that you can then just simply push flat. Now, one thing that does cause folks some concern is you can notice the hinges here. This hinge makes contact, that one floats a little bit. That is by design, and when you go ahead and you put weight on the ramp, that will come together. Now the reason for that is there are two springs on the driver's side that make this ramp so easy to use. Now the tension of the springs does cause it to be pulled up a little bit like that, but that is by design. And again, when you step on the ramp or you go to use the ramp, putting any weight on there, that eliminates that gap. And simply to put the ramp away, I like to do it with one hand because that's what it's all about, is how easy it is to use. And lock it.